What's up, guys? Welcome to another speed build. I hope you are all having a great day. Today we are over in Copperdale and I am building a large family home that is furnished for a family of 6. Since I have been on a one-pack build kick lately, I figured this would be the perfect time to go ahead and use only the base game and high school years to create this house. And you might be thinking, well, why is it the perfect time? Well, I, for one, do not have any kids and I do not go back to school, so it doesn't really apply to me, but it is back to school season, so I figured it was the perfect time to build a house that is full of students. I always love to try and build with whatever season we are in, and so back to school season, I feel like that is like the jump start to the holiday season, and so I always enjoy when back to school season comes around, but that's coming from someone that has no kids and doesn't have to worry about that. So I'm not sure what that says about me, but my reasoning for enjoying it is just because I know the holidays are right around the corner. I cannot wait for Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. I just love that time of year, and it's always so much fun to build in The Sims during the holiday season. Last year, I did a lot of different houses for different occults during the Halloween season, and honestly, I can't wait to do the same thing again this year, but I want to tackle all of the occults this time, and not just the 3 main occults that we had at the time last year. We do have a brand new occult this year, so that should be super fun. I'm a little bit burnt out on fairies at the moment, but there's a long time between now and October, so I should be more than ready to go by then. I'll also be building houses for like aliens and ghosts and mermaids, all of it, and so it'll be super exciting. And if that sounds exciting to you, if you are a fellow Halloween lover, then definitely subscribe and stay tuned so that you don't miss the series. But that's enough about Halloween. We are not in Halloween season yet. We are still in back to school season, so I will get back to this build. Like I was saying, this is a house that is furnished for a family of 6 and is not the family that you see in front of the house at the moment. They are literally just my playtesting family, but the actual family that I was envisioning for this house as I was building is 2 parents, and they actually met at Copperdale High School when they were teens. So they fell in love, then they got married shortly after high school, and not long after they got married, they ended up trying for a single baby, but to their surprise, they ended up with triplets. And fast forward to present day, those triplets are now teenagers themselves, and they are attending the very same high school that their parents attended when they were teens. And it is so fun for their parents to watch them achieve milestones at the exact same high school that they went to, which is obviously Copperdale High School here in the neighborhood of Copperdale. And they thought that they were done having kids since they ended up with triplets. They were like, okay, we got all of our kids in one shot. Not a big deal. It's a little bit hard raising triplets. I could only imagine. It seems like it would kind of be a nightmare. Like fun and cute, but a nightmare at the same time. So they were perfectly happy and content with the little family, or small-ish family that they thought that they were destined to have. But once the kids started high school, they had a lot of free time, the parents, and so they finally were able to start going on dates and kind of rekindling the fire that they thought that they lost because they were just so busy raising kids, going to work, and life kind of gets in the way and romance gets pushed off to the side a lot of the time. So now that the kids are in high school, they have a lot of free time on their hands. They decided to go on a date one night, and they came back and had a little bit more fun because the kids were gone. They were out with their friends having fun, and so the parents ended up spending some alone time together in the house. And about a month later, they ended up with a surprise. And that surprise was a positive pregnancy test. So when they thought that they were completely done having kids, life threw them a little bit of a curveball, and now they're basically starting over. And at first, they were pretty nervous and a little bit upset. Obviously, every new baby is a miracle, But when you thought you were done having kids and it was finally time for them to start doing what they wanted to do and spend time focusing on themselves, they now have a new baby, and that is where all of their attention is going to go to now. So in the beginning, it took a little bit of time to get used to during the pregnancy, but once they got used to the idea of having a brand new baby come along, they actually started to get excited. And the baby is now an infant, and the teenagers, honestly, they love this baby. They could not have been more happy that their parents ended up having another baby. They always wanted to be older siblings, just their parents never wanted any more kids, and I don't blame them for that. They had their hands full with triplets as it is. So with triplet teenagers plus an infant in the house, you guys can only imagine that this house never has a quiet or dull moment. There's always something going on. Whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. There's always some sort of excitement going on in this house. Luckily, they do have a big enough house where there's plenty of room if anyone starts getting annoyed with someone else. There's plenty of room to separate. There's more than enough space, and each of the kids do have their own room, so that's good. Nobody really gets tired of each other. This family is very, very happy, and they're all very family oriented, so it really works out perfectly. They're very family oriented, but that doesn't mean that these teenagers are any different from a regular teenager. They all have their own mood swings and issues going on that contributes to their mood swings. Each of these teenagers, they're triplets, but they do have their own unique personalities and interests, and none of these teens like or are interested in the same thing. They're triplets and they have the triplet bond, but they could not be more different at the end of the day, which keeps this house pretty exciting. I guess before I get into each of their unique personalities, I am going to rewind a little bit and go back to when they were infants. I guess let me rewind a little bit further. Mom has always dreamt of becoming a famous author. She has always loved writing and expressing her imagination through writing, and so she spent a lot of time during high school and directly after high school practicing her writing skill and working toward becoming a famous writer. As for the dad, he never really had a specific profession that he really wanted to work towards and become when he eventually grew up. He always knew he wanted to be a husband and a father and have a family and support that family. So right after high school and right after they got married, while his new wife was practicing her writing skill and working to become an author, he decided to go ahead and get any job that he could. And the first job that popped up was a chef over in the local restaurant here in Copperdale, and that is where he discovered his passion for cooking. And not long after he got that job, he actually worked his way up to being the lead chef there at that restaurant. And then his wife, she was home working on her writing skills, and she actually got a novel written and she published it, and it actually did very, very well, a lot better than either of them could have imagined. And so they started receiving royalties for that book, and she started writing a second book. And while she was writing that second book, that is actually when they found out she was pregnant. And at her very first doctor's appointment for that pregnancy, that is when they found out it was not one baby, it was not two babies, it was three babies. And they were both absolutely shocked and terrified at the same time. And so they went home and started discussing, like, what are we going to do? And she was like in tears. She was so torn up. She said, I finally got my career started, something I have dreamt of doing since I was a child. And she was just really tore up about it. It was like bittersweet. She was so happy. She was expecting a baby. Didn't know it was going to be three babies, but you know what? Any baby is a blessing, no matter the size of how many you're having. She knew if it was one baby, she wouldn't have a problem writing her book at the same time of caring for their child while her husband went to work. But now that it was 3, she didn't know what she was going to do. She thought she was going to have to give up her dream job. But her and her husband, they started talking about it, and he knows how much this job means to her. And really the only thing he's ever wanted in his life was to become a father. So they both decided mutually that she would continue her profession. And honestly, I feel like that's a better idea anyways. I feel like an author, you're going to receive more money being an author than you would a chef. So you're going to need as much money as you possibly could get raising triplets. So they both mutually decided that he would quit his job not long before she had the triplets. Plenty of time to do the nursery and prepare for all of the babies that are coming. And she would continue pursuing her career as a writer. So finally, the babies came along and Dad was in over his head. It ended up being a lot harder than he ever imagined it to be, but he got through it. He did what he had to do to take care of all 3 of his children. It was a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of cleaning bottles, changing diapers. He would cry sometimes because it was just so much work. It was a lot, but he got through it. And since he was a stay-at-home dad, he was able to fully take care of the kids' needs as much as possible. So when they went through their infancy stage, he was able to get all of their milestones achieved, and they ended up getting the top-notch infant trait, which I think is a real trait. I know there's a top-notch toddler, but is there a top-notch infant? I feel like there is. If it's not top-notch infant, it's something of the sort. It's something similar. And so they each received that trait through their infant years. And then when they went to toddler, he was actually able to get each of their skills maxed out, and so they received the top-notch toddler trait as well. He really gave those kids the best start to life that he possibly could do, and he obviously did a fantastic job. And then since they got both of those top-notch traits as infant and toddlers, once they reached childhood, they really had a great start, and so they had a few skills already developed. And that is when they took the time to really figure out their interests and hobbies and start practicing the skills that they knew they were truly interested in and might want to develop a career towards when they were older. So childhood is when they each really found out that no matter how close they were truly different at the end of the day. The oldest triplet ended up being a boy, and he decided as a kid that he really loved developing his mental skill. He kind of takes after his mom in that aspect. And so he focused on maxing out his mental skill and completing the mental aspiration. And so he actually developed the mentally gifted trait as a kid because he completed the whiz kid aspiration. And as a toddler, he always loved playing with the little tablet, watching videos on there, practicing his skills on there. And so when he grew up to a child, he fell in love with video games. And so he really dreamt of becoming a tech guru when he was older, or maybe a video game developer or something of the sort, something that has to do with computers. And then the second triplet ended up being a girl, and she always loved just running around and being very, very active. So during her child years, she really focused on her motor skill and maxing out her motor skill, and she completed the rambunctious scamp aspiration. And so she actually developed the physically gifted trait. And she discovered once she gets older, she really wants to do some sort of athletic career, whether that is a dancer or maybe a professional athlete or something like that, as long as it focuses on movement and being athletic. That is all that matters. And as for the last and final triplet, that one ended up being another girl, and at a young age, she always loved drawing and painting and anything artistic. And so when she became a child, she really focused on her creativity skill, and she spent so much time drawing at her little activity table and making friendship bracelets and all of that fun stuff. And so she focused on becoming a creative prodigy, and she did complete that aspiration and was rewarded the creatively gifted trait. So each of these kids are talented and gifted in their own unique ways, and so it makes parenting these kids like super fun for these parents. So for now, I am going to put a pause on the storyline, and I will continue talking about the teens once we get to each of their bedrooms. For now, I want to talk about the build for a little bit. As for the exterior of the build, I really wanted it to match with the rest of Copperdale. Like, it is not exactly like the rest of the houses as far as like the shape of it goes, but it's close enough. It's a suburban house, at least, you know, that's better than nothing. And the color scheme is a lot like the rest of the houses in this neighborhood. I really wanted to stick with like the neutral tones and the earthy tones, and so I stuck with like a beige on the outside, and I did the half brick, half paneling on the first story, and then the second story I just did the paneling. I really love that combination. I think it looks so good in real life and in The Sims. I'm just a sucker for that combination, and I don't know why. It looks like super like aesthetically pleasing for me, and that's coming from someone that loves a good suburban house. So, you know, that's probably why I love that combination so much. I have the exterior pretty much laid out. I am not done with it yet. I still have a lot of landscaping left to do, but I did add a pool out there, and it's a pretty large pool, to be honest. And we also have a guest house, and I will be furnishing that later in the build. And the whole setup in the backyard is pretty different than what I've done in the past, and it's pretty unique and it's pretty different, but I kind of like it at the same time. I mean, I guess like unique and different is a good thing. I'm acting like it's a bad thing, and it's really not. It's a good thing. And one other thing to note about the outside, I actually did place like some trellises alongside the back of the house where the back porch is, and I added one of those trellis ladders because it came with high school years, and that is when sneaking out was announced for teenagers, and we have 3 of them in this house, and so I could not add that trellis for the storytelling purpose of one of these kids sneaking out. And there's one particular one that is a little bit of a rebel, and I would have to say that is the artistic one. And she just loves sneaking out and hanging out with her friends. Like, she doesn't do anything bad or criminal or anything like that when she sneaks out. It is literally just for the fun of it, just for the thrill, and that's it. But currently we are working on Mom's office. This is where she does all of her writing. So I figured now would be the perfect time to talk about the office. So everybody knows that this is Mom's sanctuary. This is her creative sanctuary, and literally no one is allowed in here, not even her husband. Like, she tells everybody when she comes in here, she needs pure concentration, and that's it. And they actually had it soundproof so that she couldn't hear all of the madness going on outside of the office. As you can imagine, there's a lot of chaos in this house. There's literally triplets. No matter the age, triplets would always be making a lot of noise, I feel like. From babies to infants to children to teens, it doesn't really matter. It goes from crying and tantrums to playing to fighting. So yeah, there's always a lot of noise going on. And so a long time ago, they decided to have some noise canceling insulation put in between the walls. And the book that you see on the wall there, I really wanted to add that in here because I can just imagine that is like her very first novel that she ever wrote that did so great and launched her career. So of course she would put it on a plaque and put it in her office. Like, who wouldn't do that? And I mean, that's pretty much it for the office. There's not much else to say about that. As for the living room, this is a pretty unique layout for the living room that I have done before. Like, I've never laid it out like that, but I actually really like it. Once I constructed the floor plan and I started decorating the living room, I realized how absolutely massive it was, and it took me a little bit of time to figure out how to fill it up, because I hate building a house in The Sims and then it's like a large space with nothing but like a couch or two. Like, I cannot stand the look of that. It actually kind of irritates me, I'm not gonna lie. So it took me a little bit of time to figure out how I'm going to fill up this space using just living room furniture. And so I really enjoy the layout that I came up with like the 3-seater sofa in the back with a couple of nightstands. Or end tables. I guess they're more considered end tables. Nightstands are kind of by the bed, right? So I put a couple of end tables on each side of the 3-seater sofa. And then instead of putting 2 love seats on each side of the sofa, I decided just to put a couple of single chairs on both sides. And then I put a end table in between those chairs, and it really took up a lot of space, which is what I was aiming for. And it looked really nice too. And then I put the large octagon shaped coffee table in the middle of it, and that kind of tied it all together. I never get to use that coffee table because of really honestly how large it is, but it worked perfectly for this situation. And then they do have the brand new infant, and so of course I had to put the playpen looking crib in the living room. I love to do that. That's nothing new. I do that kind of often, especially in such a large house. The infant's crib is actually upstairs, and so I just feel like that's a lot of extra walking for your sim to do. It already takes them half the day to get from one side of the house to the other. And so I figured instead of like having to make the sim put the baby in the crib upstairs every time it needs a nap, which is literally like every 2 hours in the game, I feel like, why not put a playpen, at least that's what I call that crib because it looks like a playpen to me. Why not put a playpen in the living room so that there is an extra place for the infant to sleep for nap time? I also remembered to put a ceiling fan in pretty much each of the rooms for this build, which is so fun. I love using the ceiling fans in The Sims. I don't know why. I think it's because it gives like a super realistic touch, and they don't always work with every build, but for like a suburban family house, I feel like it brings the whole build together. I even put some outside, and you guys, if you're a returning viewer of mine, you know how I feel about that. I feel like that's luxurious. A ceiling fan outside on the porch just feels super luxurious to me, and I don't even know why. So I pretty much finished all of the furnishings on the first story, but I do want to bring up the fact that I was able to use those chairs from high school years that I have been dying to use for the longest time. Like, ever since high school years came out, I really wanted to use those chairs, and something about them makes it hard for me to use. And so I just bit the bullet and I decided to use it for this build, because what other opportunity would I have to use it unless I'm building a 1-pack build with high school years again? And for some reason, when I'm in the game and I am furnishing a house and I put those chairs down around the dining table, it never really looks right to me. And the swatches on those chairs, I don't know, they're hard to use. And I actually came across that beige swatch with the like little stripes in it, and I thought it looked pretty good with the rug that I used. Now, we do have 2 different patterns going on, which isn't necessarily ideal. It kind of irritates me in certain situations, but I feel like those colors are so similar that it kind of worked. And like I said, I wanted to use those chairs for literally the longest time, and so I said, you know what? Whatever. I don't care if there's 2 different patterns. I am using those chairs. And now that I'm looking at it, or well, earlier when I was actually doing it on the video. Now that I was looking at it during editing, it actually looks really good, and I don't know why, when I'm building, it just looks different as I'm building than it does when I'm watching it back again. Does that make sense? I never thought that was a thing, but apparently it's a thing for me. I have a different eye when I'm looking at something fast forwarded while editing than I do in the moment as I'm furnishing. It is what it is. But yeah, at least it was a good opinion though. At least like it actually looks good, and now it makes me want to use those chairs more often. And another thing about the dining room, I did put 2 high chairs in there because I originally thought I was gonna make this family have twin infants, but I'm like, you know what, that's just too much. I'm just gonna do 1 infant. But then I forgot to go back and delete one of the high chairs, so there's 2 high chairs there. There's a spare. It never hurts to have a spare of anything when you have an infant. And the kitchen came out really good. That is Dad's office because he really did develop a passion for culinary arts when he was a chef before the triplets came along, and he never lost that passion. It just went from cooking for random strangers to cooking for his family, and so he spends a lot of time in there. He literally bakes something for his kids every single day before they get off of school, and he absolutely loves it. He bakes and cooks for his wife all the time too. Like, she wants for nothing. When she's in the office all day long, writing, he is literally forcing her to eat lunch because she will work through lunch every day if he lets her. And I put 3 lunch boxes on the counter as well with like a little menu board above it. I figured that is Dad's list for the week of what he is packing the kids for their lunches. I thought that was super cute. But we are now upstairs, and I already have a good part of the son's room done. And I want to talk a little bit about him before we are finished with his room. So like I was saying earlier, he absolutely loves playing on the computer and practicing his programming skill on the computer as well. He is actually part of the computer team at his high school, and he is working to become the captain of this team. He is not captain yet, but he will get there. And what gamer room is complete without a couple of cans of sodas right by his little gaming area? I feel like that's super realistic, especially for like a teen boy. And I put a Twinkie there too. I really wanted to put like a bag of chips, but I couldn't find one. Like, why is this not like The Sims 2 where when you had your sim pull out a snack and it was a bag of chips, it was a literal bag of chips, not like a bowl of chips. I can't stand that about The Sims 4. I mean, who gets a bowl of chips and not just the bag? Unless like you're getting it for your kids, because who wants like little dirty sticky kid fingers in your bag of chips? But as like an adult, do you not just grab the bag and eat it directly out of the bag like a savage? Because that's what I do. But yeah, so not only is he part of the computer team at his high school, he is also a part-time gaming streamer. And so when he gets off of school, he goes straight home and then he streams his favorite video game, which happens to be My Sims Racing. That is his absolute favorite game. He really has a passion for it, and he makes some pretty good side money too, at least for a teen. And that is pretty much all there is to say about that particular teen. His bedroom, I obviously tried my hardest to make it look like a gaming kid's room, and I think it looks really good. And not only for gaming, but I put like some educational posters above his bed and really tried to make it look like, a super smart gaming kid was in that room. And I actually really like the way that it came out. I think it's one of my best teen boys rooms I have made, at least in recent past. But we are now in the youngest triplets room, and this is the artistic one. Obviously, you can see what's going on. It's very, very creative and messy in here, and I kind of did that on purpose. I feel like, you know, people that are very artistic are a little bit on the cluttered side. Not necessarily sloppy, but they just love stuff everywhere. And so that's what I tried to mimic in her room. So I have a lot of fairy lights in here. I have a lot of like pictures, and those particular ones that are on her dresser, I figured those are some of her favorite art pieces that she has created. And I absolutely love the hot dog one. I don't know why. I think it's super, super cute and looks exactly like something that particular sim would paint. I actually figured all of the art pieces on her wall were ones that she created herself. Besides the tapestry, that is literally something she just purchased and puts behind her bed, but it looks like something that a super artistic sim would have in their room. And unfortunately, there is not an art team at the high school, which is super unfortunate. I feel like that's a little bit of a missed opportunity. Maybe they did that because there's like an art team at the university for Discovery University, but that's totally different. That's not high school, that's college. So I feel like it's a little bit of a missed opportunity not to have at least an art class or something. But if there was, she would definitely be part of it. So she just spends a lot of her free time in her room listening to music and painting whatever she has on her mind. And she has a wild imagination too. As you could probably tell, she literally painted a colorful hot dog. So I mean, that takes a pretty creative person. And I love that clutter piece that came in high school years where it's like a bag with like shoes and clothes and books scattered around. I really wanted to use that in one of the teens' rooms, and I figured the artistic one would be the perfect place for it. Because she just, you know, she's just super cluttered. You know, she's not a slob. It's not like super messy and trashy in there. She just has a lot of stuff everywhere. There's nothing wrong with that. But we are finally on the last and final triplets room, and this is the middle triplet, the second oldest one, and this is the athletic one. And she is actually the head cheerleader on the cheer team at Copperdale. I'm sure you guys seen that one coming. I mean, I could not do that. That is like one of the major parts of Copperdale is like the cheerleading, and the football kind of, but the football kind of sucks. It's not real football. They literally just like toss it to each other. I feel like there's more involved with the cheerleaders than there is for the football. So yeah. I had to make at least one of the girls a cheerleader, and she's a wonderful cheerleader. Like, she really wants to become a professional cheerleader, but unfortunately that career does not exist in The Sims. You can do it in high school, but you cannot make it a career. And so she'll just have to settle for being a professional athlete of some sort. So she spends most of her time practicing her cheering skills, but not only does she love that, she also is a trendsetter in her high school, and she just loves fashion. She loves going to thrift tea and picking up old clothing and trying to make it new again. And so she has a rack of clothing in her room with some like unhung clothes under it. I just love that piece of clutter, and I had to put it somewhere, and it made the most sense in her room. And of course I had to use that big body length mirror that came with high school years. It is so cute, and then I put some makeup in front of it. So that mirror might not be actually usable since there's makeup in front of it, but it could be. You never know, it might be, but probably not. I unfortunately was not able to put a cheer mat in her room because it's super large, and I really wanted to put the clothing rack in her room instead. And I also don't have the cheering mat anywhere else on the property. So if you download this and you stick with the storyline that I have going on, then you'll just have to purchase the cheering mat separately and then put it in her inventory, and then you can place it anywhere and anytime you want her to practice. So that is it for each of the teens' personalities. As you can tell, they are very, very different, but at the end of the day, they are still triplets and they still have that triplet bond, and they absolutely love each other. They all have their own group of friends, but honestly, I feel like that is probably for the best, and that is probably keeping them so close and drama free. I just can imagine if they're all in the same exact clique, there could probably be a lot of fighting going on. And we don't want that in a sibling relationship. That is not good, because once you start that fight and rivalry, it will never end, and it's pretty unfortunate that happens sometimes. But that doesn't happen for them, and that will never happen for them. And if it did, their dad would probably fight with them until it was squashed, because that's the type of dad that they have. He will do whatever it takes to keep his family together and keep them from separating and drifting apart. And as for the infant's room, I was thinking that they ended up with a second son. Really, it's kind of gender neutral, so you can have whatever gender infant that you want in that room, but I was imagining that they now have 2 boys and 2 girls, and so it kind of equals each other out. I thought that was a super cute idea, and I really tried to change up the nursery a little bit. I put some plumb bobs behind the crib, and I've never done that before. I usually don't use that plumb bob picture. Even though I love it, I'm just like, kinda, what's the point? And so I just never really bring myself to use it, but I did use it in the infant's room, and I thought it was super, super cute and different than I normally do, and that is always the goal, to keep it as different as possible. And I put a few infant toys, and I put a dresser with some mirrors, and I called it a day. I didn't really spend too much time in the infant's room, since this is mainly all about the teenagers anyways. And then as for both the back porch and the back balcony, I kept it pretty simple, and I just put some love seats with like a coffee table in between there, and I used the coffee table from high school years that I've never used before, and I didn't even really know it existed, and I actually really like it, and it matched perfectly out there with the sofas that I ended up using. And so it's pretty simple, but it looks pretty good, and it's a porch and it's a balcony. What really is there to talk about there? And we are now in the guest house in the backyard, and that's exactly what this is. It's a guest house, so if either of their parents come over, this is where they stay. Sometimes when the teens, want to get away, their parents do allow them to come back here and sleep back here or hang out with their friends back here, because these parents really let their kids do whatever they want as long as they get their schoolwork done and they have good grades and they stay out of trouble. Those are the only really rules that this family has for their kids. Honestly, this looks exactly like all of the other guest houses I have ever done. It's probably a little bit different because I used a platform and then I made the platform go down into the kitchen. There is no dining room, because where would I put one? Tell me. Where would I put one? There is no space. So it's not really needed. The guests can either go outside and eat at the table outside, or they can just sit down in the chair and watch TV while they eat. It's not a big deal. But we do have a little bit of a kitchen, and I was actually able to fit a fridge and stove in there. At first, I thought I was not able to do that. I thought I was a little screwed, but I was able to figure it out. I just had to delete a window, and then I end up later on in the build, since there's no window and I hate just a blank wall with nothing on it, I put some trellises back there just to make up for it. And then the bedroom in here is super, super small, so I had to just put a single bed in here instead of a double bed, but that's fine. I mean, someone can sleep on the couch, or they can sleep on the floor if they want to complain about it. It's like that saying, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. Especially if you're not the one paying for it. So just, you got the floor if it's an issue. One person can have the bed, one person can have the floor. And then, of course, I had to put the ceiling fans in the guest room as well. But that is pretty much it for the furnishings. I believe we are completely done with the house and the guest house. And I am now outside finally finishing up the exterior. Oh, but before I talk about the exterior, I did totally forget to even mention that there is an attic in this house, and you are actually able to get up in the attic because I did include a ladder to get up there. And I was going to do something with the attic, but honestly, I didn't. There's no reasoning behind it. So it's a clean slate for you guys. If you download this, you could totally add whatever you want in the attic. You could either just put some spare stuff in there to make it look like a real attic with like some boxes, maybe some spider webs, maybe the old cribs, something like that. Or you could do what I was going to do before I decided not to. You could make it into like a teenage hangout sanctuary sort of thing and put a bunch of games up there and some sofas or something like that. If you have other packs, if you have Discovery University, you could put like the ping pong table up there or the foosball table or something like that. You could make it into a super, super fun room for the teenagers. I feel like that would be the perfect idea, but I didn't feel like doing it. This is such a large build as it is. I was like, you know what? I'll just leave it to be a clean slate for whoever downloads it. And honestly, that wouldn't have been the first time that I made it into like a teen hangout. I actually have a video that I did about a month or two ago, and it's called like Suburban Dream House, and that build I included an attic that I made into like a teenage hangout room. So if that sounds interesting, go check it out on my channel. It is available. But as for the final details of the backyard, I came across that bonfire that I had no idea, or at least I forgot existed in the base game. And I never do bonfires in The Sims. I usually always do like monkey bars or the swing set if you have it, or like some gardening plots, but never ever do I do a bonfire. I might do the small fire, but never the bonfire. This seemed like the perfect opportunity to put the bonfire. I can honestly just imagine the teenagers inviting all of their friends over, and that's 3 teens, all with different friends. So that's a lot of teens out here. But I can just imagine them throwing like parties, like a pool party, and then once it turns nighttime, they light the bonfire. I put a radio out here between the chairs because I do like some like regular picnic table chairs, like the single chairs you'll see here in a minute. I just put those next to each other, trying to make it look realistic. I didn't want to put like nice sofas out there. Like, who puts a nice sofa or love seat or bench in front of a bonfire? You usually just pull over some lawn chairs and have a good time. So that's what I tried to mimic here. And then in between a couple of the chairs, I did put a radio. Now the radio, if you have seasons, the radio will break if it rains. So you'll either just have to replace it every time. I just did like the cheap 50 simoleon one. Or you could just delete it and place it out there when you do have a party over. So it's up to you. But I usually, if I place a radio outside and it rains, I just replace it when I'm ready to use it again, to be honest. Or you can have your sim fix it, and that's like the perfect way to raise up your handiness skill. But yeah, I can just imagine these teenagers inviting all their friends over and having a big bonfire party out there and blaring music, having a good time, and that just seems so much fun. And it reminds me of when I was a teenager and I tried to throw a bonfire party and my parents came home early and they crashed it. So yeah, that was fun. But these parents allow their kids to do it because in The Sims, you can't start wildfires like you can in real life. So, I don't blame my parents for that at all. I probably would do the exact same thing. Coming home and seeing a bunch of teenagers out there with a fire started, yeah, no, that does not sound like a good combination whatsoever. But yeah, so here I am adding those like lawn chairs I was talking about. I just think this makes a lot more sense. Is it as aesthetically pleasing? Probably not, but is it realistic? Yes it is, and that is what I was aiming for. But yeah, the only other thing to note about the backyard is the fact that I put some gardening planter boxes back there. That's Dad trying out his gardening skill. He wants to grow some fresh veggies and fruits to cook with, and he's not that good at it yet, but you know what? just like anything, you have to practice. But that is it for today's build. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Of course, if you did, please do not forget to leave a like on this video. It lets me know you enjoyed it and you are looking forward to more builds just like this one, and also subscribe if you have not already. I recently had a lot of new subscribers come to my channel, so I just want to take a second to welcome you guys. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. I probably should have said this a little bit sooner, but thank you all, and I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Of course, welcome if you are some of the new ones. I am really happy that you guys decided to stick around, and I hope you are looking forward to my future builds just as much as I am. So yeah, just thank you all so much. I really cannot express it enough. But with that being said, I will leave you to enjoy the rest of the video on your own, the rest of the 20 seconds that are left. And stick around for the screenshots. I am including screenshots in my videos if you were not aware, so stick around for those. I hope you enjoy them. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.